Okay. Good morning, everybody. Oh, Lord, I done forgot to put my robe on. That is my first senior moment of the day. Would you guys mind too much if I don't put it on today? I don't feel right, though. Hold on. Okay. Oh, Lord. Okay, here we go. Arms are all inside out. Shaking my head. Well, you know what? That's the thing about live television. It's real. And this is why I cannot wait until I get to NBC where there's a wardrobe mistress or somebody to take care of that stuff. I can't be worried about these little details. Anyway, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Loren Michaels Harris. I feel better. I can't do bathrobe moments without a bathrobe. Help me welcome to the show my sidekick. She's been here all 4 years. This is Lucy McGillicuddy Ricardo, and I wouldn't be able to do anything without her. Today we're drinking some toasted caramel, if you're from the South. And that is the Bell of Purpose. That's right. What is it? Well, it's new to season 4, and it's your opportunity to be a part of something greater than yourselves. When our guest says something that you're like, ooh, can I get an amen up in here? Hallelujah. Or, I'm feeling what you're talking about. I'm picking up what you're dropping off. That bell's going to ring. That's when you throw some hearts and some love on the screen. You can also take it a step further by simply hitting the share button, starting a watch party, or just letting someone know, hey, you better get over here. It's going down over at Bathrobe Moments. That's the Bell of Purpose. So I don't have any COVID stuff to report. It's the same old. Resurgence numbers are starting to spike all over the country from all of the places that opened early. But for me and mine, we ain't going nowhere. That's right. We are still on self-imposed lockdown. You best believe I ain't trying to go out that way. I'm just saying. So I'd be interested. Are you guys moving about? How are you doing it? Everybody's got their own plan. So, but I'm gonna sit back in the cut. I'm gonna watch for a minute. You know what I mean? It's kind of rainy here in the Chicagoland area, out here in Naperville. I'm looking outside, and it was raining earlier. Now the clouds are kind of moving. It's supposed to be on and off rain all weekend. Let's hope they're wrong again. We are streaming live this morning, as always, from the following platforms. Facebook, YouTube, Roku. I know I say that because it gets somebody out there. Roku, Android, Amazon Fire Stick, Apple TV, and of course from our home base, E360 TV out in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. And I want to say hats off, good morning, and thank you so very much to my wonderful sponsors over at, that's right, I want to see if you remembered, symposium.us, where you can turn your content into what? That's right, cash. Moolah. All you have to do is get over there. Anything you're good at, you can teach somebody else. There are people over there right now doing vision boarding classes, yoga classes, dance classes, rap classes, cooking classes, doing masterminds, all kinds of things over there. Anything you want to share with the world, there's a platform for you at symposium.us. Head over to Google Play Store or the App Store and download the app today and get started turning your cell phone into a payphone. I got it. There it is. Good morning to all you wonderful people. My guest today is a young man who I've just made acquaintance with just recently. But you know what? When you meet fellow people on the road, fellow travelers who are out to do the same thing that most of us are, which is to change the world, make it a better place for everybody. It doesn't take time to get to know them. You know them instantly, right? You know what I'm saying? So Anthony Fernandez, known to his friends and family around the globe as Tone Fernandez, is an entrepreneur. He's based out of Chicago, and he currently runs a financial services agency along with a social media marketing brand. His passion has always been to serve the community, and growing up in gang-infested areas, he's witnessed many of his friends and classmates fall victim to gun violence. This sparked an idea to merge both his passions, entrepreneurship and community service. Today, he is creating the this is what I love. That's why I got him here today. Creating the Entrepreneur Resource Center. What is this? It's geared towards helping inner city kids learn the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. His hope is to inspire the youth to focus on positive directions, to stay away from the negative lifestyle found out in those streets. So I can't think of a better mission statement than what you just heard here. It ties in with what we do here in Chicago, back there on the wall with the Power of We Symposium. So when my good friend Michael Toy, who's always connecting me with wonderful, wonderful God anointed people, I couldn't help it. I had to get him in here. So I believe I heard some kind of theme song playing downstairs in the lobby. He could be here. You know, I can always tell when these kids get here. Why? Because they're rap music.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you doing today?
Good. First question for you. Are you sipping on some funky cold Medina?
So I'm sipping on some Bustelo. If you know Puerto Ricans, we like our coffee strong, and it's infamous in the Puerto Rican coffee culture called Bustelo. So
Bustelo.
Yes, very strong.
Where do you get that?
You could get it at any grocery store. They're very popular. They even have pop-up shops in the north side of Chicago, where they have little cafes. But you can get you a tin at any grocery store.
Wow. So you look like you are having trouble growing in that mustache. That shows how young you are. What are you, about 14?
I'm 34 years old, but my whole life I've always looked like I've been 15 my whole life.
Wow, you're probably just now beginning to embrace that and say, that's not such a bad thing, right?
Yes, yeah. I've been, my whole philosophy has been, one day it's going to serve me, when I'm in my mid 40s and people are like, you look like you're 21. That's when I'm going to be happy with it.
Yes, Lord. I get it sometimes, but I always think they're lying. I'm like, you don't look 58. I'll be 58 in a couple days. And
you should see my parents. You should see my parents, though.
They're young looking.
Oh my God. People think that my parents are my brother and sister. My dad was 15, 16 when I was born, and my mom was like, 19. So then they already they have that young gene.
And your mom's a cougar.
Well, the story is my dad lied to her for like a year, and then by the time she figured out that he wasn't 19, it was already too late.
She was already in love. That's what I'm trying to pull up I want to watch the show on my phone, and I had to have it open to your thing. Okay, there we are. So let me turn it down so we don't have a bunch of feedback. Oh, that is not true. That's right. Okay, I forgot to change that anyway. So I'm so glad you're here, and I want to thank you for stepping in. I had a cancellation late afternoon. You were on the phone when I was talking to the person's manager.
I was,
and so we had a meeting, and then I was like, well, wait a minute, you're here, and saved me a lot of time. So I really appreciate you stepping up for me today.
No problem.
So take us into the world of Tone Fernandez. You tell us about where you grew up. What was the area like? Now, are you in Chicago proper or one of the suburbs?
I'm actually in the city. So I grew up on the northwest side, Humboldt Park, Logan Square, Hermosa area.
Okay.
And I bounced around there. I grew up majority of the time in Logan Square. Living here, I would say my whole life. I moved away a few times to different neighborhoods, but then I ended up coming right back just because of, I don't know if you've been familiar, but Logan Square it's a new hotspot to live in Chicago. I ended up staying here. And it's a part of my purpose though, because this is the area that I want to start, a lot of my community service. This is where I want to kind of the epicenter to be and to branch out. But I grew up here, I grew up humbly, wasn't on, we weren't rich by any means.
Right.
As you heard earlier, my parents were super young, so they were trying to figure things out. So the beginning of my life, we lived a lot with grandma. My grandmother lives here in the northwest side as well.
Okay.
So we lived with grandma, and then eventually my parents said, you know what, they decided to do their own thing, buy their own house. But like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a rough area. Luckily, and this is kind of a weird kind of thing. Growing up, my dad actually was in the streets himself. But then he decided to, once he had his family, he decided to get out and to kind of, focus on us. But that was actually a blessing in my life because I had somebody in my life who was, he didn't let me walk to, through any corners, through any things like that. So it allowed me to kind of stay distracted from a lot of what was going on around me. But I had an amazing childhood. I have a huge family, man. In the north, it's funny because me and my significant other the other day, we were kind of mapping out where all my family lives, and I have about 20 aunts and uncles who live in Chicago.
Wow.
and then I have about altogether it was about 10 to 15 great aunts and uncles who live in and around Chicago. So
Mm.
so we were looking at the map. We're like, wow, every block in my neighborhood, or every about 5-20,
Somebody.
that's the one of my relatives.
Corn coffee. Let's circle back for a second, because there's this one person out there, I'm sure somebody, not everybody out there may know what when we say in the streets means. So when you say your dad was in the streets, somebody's picturing him standing on the corner harmonizing with 4 other Puerto Rican guys. Someone else is picturing him with a bandana holding up old women, and then somebody else is picturing him selling drugs or riding with a motorcycle gang. So when you say it, what does that mean? Just
Yeah, so
not in school, not just hanging out. What was it?
well, no, he was so in the area that he grew up in, at the time it was, you had to be in a gang. So he was actually in a gang in the
Okay.
northwest side of Chicago from the age of 13 years old. So he was in the street life because his uncles were in the street life. So it was almost like a family neighborhood thing. So he was actually in the streets doing all the stuff.
It was like a rite of passage back then
Yeah,
for a
there was
lot of people, a lot of families.
so many different reasons. It was almost like you had to do it to protect yourself from different things, from rival neighborhoods, from
Hmm.
all these things. So yeah,
Hmm.
he was a part of that lifestyle.
So what did he, then he started having a family, and
Yeah.
what kind of wisdom did he impart on you about that lifestyle?
Well, what he mentioned to me, what he kept saying to me, and he just drilled it over and over, is like, hey, you're one decision away from messing up your whole life, and
Mm.
one decision away from getting a felony, from some of his friends were killed, and some of his friends are you know addicted to drugs. And he always mentioned that to me. He's like, don't mess
Yeah.
up your life, don't mess up your record, it's all you have. So that was like ringing in the back of my head my whole life. And every time I had a decision, because there were times where I hang out in my neighborhood and you just end up with the wrong crowd sometimes.
Hmm.
And there was times where, let me not go with these people today, because my dad's voice and his
Hmm.
advice always ringing in my ears.
Hmm.
And then other things too, like when you see the gun violence in Chicago, and he would always tell me, I don't want to see you standing on any street corners, because
See, thank you for bringing that up, because I'm so grateful to you. You're down in the nucleus, if you will, at the epicenter of where a lot of crime takes place. And Logan Square is very near and dear to my heart, because that's where the Stan Mansion is at, and that's where we hold the power we symposium. So a lot of our brown kids come from the schools right around there. So I know what you're talking about. But what about this? So you have such a large family. It would seem to be to me, it would stand to reason that there's probably still some family members out there in the life, maybe, right?
You know
So
what? It's indirect family members, like second cousins, things like
yeah.
that, who still do that. But for
It,
the most part, it was a complete awakening from my immediate family, because
mm,
my aunt's husband, former husbands, or former fathers of their child, were also in the lifestyle. And it was almost as if, I think that at the same moment when they all realized that this is not worth it, a lot of people shifted to a different lifestyle. So I got to get as far away from this as possible, just because we've seen some of our uncles, or some of our uncle-in-laws do 20 years, do 15 years,
or lose their lives.
yeah, or lose their lives. And
Hmm.
I think that collectively my family came together, my immediate aunts and uncles, and said, you know what, they separated. And they were very strict with us, because I grew up in a family where I told you earlier, we were at grandma's house. We grew up in grandma's house. So a lot of my aunts and uncles were also young. So they also
Hmm.
lived either in the building or across the street. And they were also protectors. I remember an instance where I've always been a good kid, and I was actually in 8th grade, here in the Northwest side. And there was some kids. I was just, going by after school program, picking up my little cousin. And I remember this kid, he was gangbanging at me. And me, it means nothing to me. It's Chinese to me, because I wasn't in that lifestyle. But my aunt happened to be driving past. And I remember this. My aunt has a temper. And she told me, get in the car. And she says, we're going to go out. So she follows the kid. And he ends up going to his house in front with his grandparents or something. And she gets out and she reams him a new one. She said, if you ever see my nephew, don't ever do.
Uh-oh. We got a little digital trouble right there.
I think my family came together and we became lifestyle, but they also protect.
Oh my goodness. Now
Hello?
we didn't hear any of that.
Oh, okay.
Something
So
happened. So she said, "Don't you ever."
yeah, so she reamed the guy a new one, said, don't you ever, when you see this kid, don't you ever, throw any gang signs at him. Don't you ever do any of that. But that was kind of like how my family operated from that point on is they protected
Excuse
us.
me.
They created a wall around us.
Uh-huh.
So we weren't exposed to a lot of that growing up, or we were protected from it for the most part.
So when you said the kid was, you said he gang banged at me. Is that what he did? He came up and he did whatever,
Yeah,
the
he did like
vibes
a
or what?
yeah, he did like a
I look
sign,
like I'm having an epileptic seizure when I try it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. He threw
So
up a
how
gang.
does that work? They walk up to you, they don't recognize you, and so what is it? It's like a challenge. What are you now? If you were a gangbanger and he had done that, what were you supposed to do?
I guess, when they do that, you throw up your sign, and then, from that point on, depending on what both gangs are, if they're at war or if they're at peace, they can start a fight, or it could start something going on right there.
So, Tone, you live there now, and
Mhm.
I was just yesterday mentioning on the show what a sad Father's Day weekend it was because
Mm.
lots of deaths in the city. It's starting to get back to that. And then they broke records on Memorial Day. You heard about that, and then I saw the thing about the little girl who was showing her mother a TikTok dance
Mhm.
when there was shooting outside, and one came through the window, hit her in the neck. The mother said she was looked away, and then for once she looked back, and she was like, there she was on the floor grabbing up. It broke my heart. It really did. I had to sit down yesterday from what I was doing and just process that for a minute. So my question is this: what, how do you get used to hearing that, seeing that, and moving about through that? Is that some of the stuff that has fueled your desire to get this resource center started for kids?
Absolutely. I think for me, the first phase of constantly hearing this was anger. It was just anger and confusion. I remember hearing
Mm.
when I was in eighth grade. One of my buddies from eighth grade had got shot and killed. He was a year older than me, and he was his first year of high school, and he was
Yeah.
shot. And I remember that in eighth grade, hearing that somebody close to you got shot, it was so much confusion. Like, my innocence was like, well, he's just a kid. Like, why would they kill him? But then I was also angry, and I became very angry. And then obviously, you get sadness, and then what happens is that just balls together. You never get used to hearing it.
Mm.
I still tear up when I watch a news article of hearing like the 3-year-old that just got killed in South Austin last week. I still tear up. It still makes me angry. It still gives you those feelings. But
Yeah.
as opposed to before, I just was angry. Now it's like, okay, what can I do? What can I spark? If I could just save one life by impacting one kid, that
Hmm.
that'll be helpful to me. So you never get used to it. It's just something that constantly bothers you.
Why do you think this? Just I'm asking your opinion, Tone. What is that thing that is so attractive? That shiny object that makes kids choose to go into the life of gangbanging? What is it? What is it they're promising them? How are they so successful at luring good kids away from their families, away from their loved ones, away from their safeness into potentially a place where you could die at any moment? Well, you
Well,
can just as a regular person, but even more so working within the organization. What is that makes it so attractive?
I think it's already glorified in neighborhoods where growing up, you see the gangbanger is like, oh man, that guy is crazy, or that guy's, man, he's badass. Someone say, excuse my language,
No, that's okay.
but it's glorified. And then on top of that, sometimes in certain neighborhoods where it's already a war zone, they provide you with that safety. Hey, roll with us, just roll with us. We got your back. And once you're in it, you're one of the things that I always tell people is, you're the most vulnerable mentally when you're in your early in your teenage years,
Mhm.
that you'll fall for anything. And I look back at some of the stuff that I fell for, like, oh, why did I do this? And they were innocent things, but I look at the kids with don't know, there's no home life or no support at home. They easily are vulnerable because of their lifestyle to that message. And once you get in, it's almost like a brainwashing for the rest of your life. And some of these guys, if they make it to age 30, they wake up and then they're like, oh, what did I do? What was this past 13, 14 years for? So
Mhm.
once they're in, they lure you in with that lifestyle, but once you're in, it's hard to get out because you're constantly being brainwashed, you're constantly getting pressured. And I think that that's what it is. It's been glorified in the neighborhoods, and then on top of
Mhm.
that, they provide you with quick money. Hey, here's
Mhm.
this much drugs, go flip this and make some
Mhm.
money. So then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you get a little bit of status, in your neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when we watch those movies that kind of take us inside that lifestyle and you get to see everything we've just been talking about, but then comes the character like you who
Mhm.
is trying to do something, open up a rec center or an after school program or something and convert an old building into something good. And then here come the ones from the community who want the kids to go the bad direction, and they come and they step to people like you trying to do good, and that's not just in the movies. So my question to you is this: did you at any point consider, like, wow, what if somebody, says, no, we don't want you to do this in our area? You know what I'm saying? Is that something you have to consider just because of where you're at? And talk about that if you could.
Yeah, actually, I have considered that. I have considered that people in the community. I've considered even people who don't want to see minorities thrive come out of nowhere and just try to, taint the program. I've considered all that based off what I've seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I've just planned ahead for that. I said, okay, what can I do to make sure that if
Mm.
these things arise, what can I do in that case? So that's all. I mean, that's all you really can do is plan for it. And I think I've been around a lot of these organizations before where they've dealt with stuff like that. And to me, the solution for that, what you just said, is just be more involved in the community even before. So even before I open up the rec center, once the quarantine is a little bit more lifted, I plan on just being a even more part of the community, more part of volunteering, so that once they see your face so many times, you're already a part. And I live in the area. I don't live far from there.
Right.
But once they see your face, once they see that you mean good for the community, then you get less resistance, on that part. But I did plan ahead for that. That's one of the things that was always on the back of my mind. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm always like, okay, what if I get resistance? What if I plan for everything? What if
Yeah.
make sure that I have the right staff once I staff this place that are not harmful to the kids. That I plan for a lot of these roadblocks ahead, and that's all you can
Yeah.
do. And then just face them when they come.
Because there's a lot of things that you have to consider when you're doing things that involve children. And
Absolutely.
so, right. And so, and I think that's why a lot of people just throw their hands up and go, oh, it's just too much. It's just too
Yeah.
much. But, I remember, and I think it was, early part of last summer, I went and I did something at the Boys and Girls Club over in your area,
Okay.
and it was just, I just love them. Oh my goodness. And it was so funny because they raffled away like 6 bikes, but then they had a table full of bags with candy in them, and it was like 4 of the kids that won the bikes were trying to trade their bikes for candy.
And
I was like, what? I was like,
give
are
them
you
the
crazy?
value.
They were like, I don't want it back. I want that candy. I was like, oh my goodness, things have changed. So let's talk about the Entrepreneurs Resource Center. Talk about that. What does it look like in your mind? What do you plan to have there? And how do you hope that it will affect
Yeah.
the kids?
Yeah, so what I want to focus on is some of the pillars that have helped me kind of be distracted from a lot of things. So leadership development. So one thing that we're going
Mm.
to teach is personal development. And on that part, we're going to invite people out who speak on personal development. So over the last 10 years, I've been connecting with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, people like yourself, who I can bring in as guest speakers. So that's
Hmm.
leadership development. We also want to go into the technical side of entrepreneurship. And what I mean by that is I want to teach kids the multimedia stuff, how to do things like this, how to edit videos. I want to have a multimedia
Mm.
center where they come in and they can start, they can request time, go into the studio, record videos so they can learn how to do that. I want to have a section where they learn coding, where they can learn, how
Wow.
to code apps and things like that. Yeah, just technically what I'm trying to do is develop them for this economy now. Then I want to go to speaking. So I want to have A
Mm.
center where there's a stage, and we can teach these kids how to speak, how to how to get in front of a crowd, how to work a room. So in this center, it's not only going to be entrepreneur stuff, but it's also going to be health and fitness. So I want to have an area where,
Nice.
and the reason why that's important to me is because as an entrepreneur, when I was reading books, I noticed that a lot of these successful entrepreneurs, when they're talking about discipline, they always talk about a few key areas: their spiritual life,
Yes.
they always talk about their fitness, and then their family. So I want to incorporate those things in, because I feel like that it creates a well-rounded person. So in this center, it's going to be fun, it's going to be modernized. I want you to vision like a Google type of office, and
Oh, okay.
and,
Where
and
there's a
we're
culture.
yeah, there's a culture. It's fun. Like, I don't want the kids to feel kind of like, when you have kids who go to Chicago public schools, that are very strict, and it sometimes feels like it's a prison, the way they run these schools. And I don't want them to feel that way. I want them to feel, once they walk in, that they're creators, they're inventors, they're whatever they want to do. And then obviously we're going to have a curriculum where they go through a course, which I'm in the middle of creating now, and that's why I mentioned the multimedia, because that one's the fun part. And then once the program's done, the goal is to provide them with grants, scholarships, grants to start their own, small business if they want. Scholarship. Let's say they're like, I don't want to start a business. I want to go to school, or my ultimate goal is I want to exponentially grow the program. So obviously, if I run one location, I can give somebody the funds to go run and build that, and maybe in another city or maybe in another part of Chicago. So what ends up happening is you're creating more entrepreneurs within the community. And what do they want to do? Most entrepreneurs, and a lot of people don't realize this, they want to give back. They want to provide, just like you. You have your program. I have my program that I want to start. So what ends up happening is you're duplicating people who are self-sufficient and who want to provide. We don't have to rely on funds from the government all the time, because a lot of
Right.
times those get cut. I used to be a part of a program here in Logan Square called the Alliance Logan Square Organization.
Okay.
Awesome program. It was right here on Fullerton in California. And I would go after school for my community hours, and I would, we would have different programs every week for kids to come. And some of these kids were from the street. Some of these kids were just being distracted, would come in and seek advice from the people there. And when I saw that, I thought, man, this is an awesome program. But that program was cut due to funding. And I remember how sad I was, because I was like, man, we're relying on the government
Right.
to pay it. And every time there's a new president, they have their own agenda. So
Everything changes.
everything
Right.
changes. And that's where I got the idea of self-funding one. But then I thought about, okay, I can only put a dent to myself, but I can create a ripple effect. If
That's
I
right.
start one, then boom, then I inspire some kids. And let's say out of the 10 kids that start their own business, one of them says, I want to be like, I want to help the community. Then it just continues, and that's what multiplies. And because my ultimate belief is, we don't have, there's, in these communities where you see the violence, some people want to point it at race, all these minorities, some people want to blame all these things. But the truth is, it's the economy. Anywhere in history where there's been poor people, there's been increase in violence.
Oh, yes.
So we just got to figure out how to get more jobs, more entrepreneurs. And then instead of having to, for people in those communities to have to go outside the community to look for jobs, they can just get jobs within the community.
Right. And also, I'm finding, that, you want some kids to come back to the area after they've gone off and gotten their higher education, to come back. But a lot of them, the last place they want to come back is to the proverbial scene of the crime. So when you do get those kids that are willing to come back and pour back into their community, it's a good thing. And I believe that desire begins when they've had a foothold in a program like the one you're describing. Because I've talked to a few of them. Marlon Haywood, who works at the school, the medical prep school that Rush is behind. And that's where we got a lot of our kids for the first Power of Week. Now, I want to ask you something. And then we're going to come back around to the idea that you have for this center. I'm kind of going off topic, but you're the first person I've had a chance to ask on the show about this. In light of all that's happening in this country right now with civil unrest and all of the Black Lives Matter and all that, what's it like for you when you sit back and you think, oh, I don't ever hear Brown Lives Matter? Do you feel that we're just clumping? Are you included in, you know what I'm saying? Because I know you deal with it. You guys deal with it in your world, because I hear it all the time. So tell me about how that makes you feel from where you stand and how you live and the crime you see with your own race being victims of it.
Well, I think that because of my upbringing, I'm always big on researching and history, and I had teachers who shared stories of the experience of being an American, being a Black American, and for me, I feel like at this point in time, the term Black Lives Matter, it's extremely relevant because when it comes to a lot of the stories we don't see, a lot of the, yeah, there's a video, but you don't see the other story of the guy who just got beat up and he maybe didn't, or he maybe got accused of a crime that he didn't. So I think that
Mm.
even though Black Lives Matters, the reason why it's important is because I think that there's more victims of police brutality, but once that movement is started and the system starts to change, it's going to affect all people of color.
Ah,
So we just
oh, I
gotta
got chills.
back the movement, and people try to taint the movement, and they try to say, oh well, this and that. Yes, of course there's negative people who try to come and taint the movement, but the expression Black Lives Matter, all it's saying is, hey, we matter too. We see that these people are getting treated this way, these people we want to make sure that we just are at that level as well. And some people take it the wrong way. They think they're saying like Black lives are better. No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying
Right.
Black lives just matter. So when a cop pulls a young kid over, and there's really no need to be honest with you, a lot of times there's no need to take the situation further. That now going forward, cops see, okay, this I'm the agitator in this situation. And again, I'm not against cops. I believe that there are a lot of great cops out there, but
Sure.
I just believe that there is a, and if I don't know if you read the 13th, the documentary on Netflix about, or you've seen the documentary, but it talks a lot about the story of how we got to where we are now.
Mm.
How in the media, blacks have always been portrayed from the first movie ever as the suspect, as the criminal.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just think that that has been ingrained in a lot of people more so than any other culture. So we have to address that. We have to get it to where stop judging me based off what you see in the media and just treat me as a human being, and then we can move on from there, and then every other race who's a minority is going to benefit from that. So that's my
So
opinion.
I agree. I agree, and thank you for shedding some light on that. But as a brown man, a Puerto Rican male, uh, have you ever experienced racial profiling, or have you ever been the victim of driving while brown? Do those things spill over into your
Yeah,
community as
of
well?
course.
Talk about
Yeah,
that.
there are times where I talk about two specific instances. I didn't get beat up or anything because I'm always very careful at how I react. But I got pulled over. Funny thing about this story is my first car ever. I try not to make it look like a gangster car. If that makes sense. Like I
I
try to
know. Yeah.
out. So I try
All
to.
tricked out.
I had a Honda Civic, and the reason why, two reasons. I didn't want to get any attention from any gang bangers, and I didn't want to get pulled over by the cops constantly. So I remember coming home, and I was wearing a uniform from Sprint because at the time I used to work at Sprint, and I was part-time college. I just went to community college, so I had books in the back, and I remember I was 2 blocks away from where I lived, and I got pulled over, but it wasn't a normal pullover. Like they had guns on me. They pulled me out of the car. They searched the whole car, and there was really no reason for it. And then they said, "Oh, and I asked them at the end. I had asked, like, well, why did you have to do all that?" They said, "Oh, this car was reported in some type of issue." And I'm thinking in my head, I don't think there's ever any game bangers driving around in a two-seater Honda Civic.
Okay.
Creating. And then the other time, I remember being in my early 20s, and I had at the time it was my high school girlfriend. We had graduated. She went off to college, so I decided to take her mother out because her mother was very lonely. She was an only child to eat at a Mexican restaurant. So we're on Fullerton and Damon, and I guess I must have turned when I wasn't supposed to, and the cop pulls me over, but it wasn't a normal pullover. It was with swearing at me, calling me racial names, calling me all
Ooh.
these things, and those were the only two instances where I can remember. And I had other ones. I remember one time I was sitting in front of my house, and my neighbor had my upstairs neighbor had got into it with his girlfriend. They were arguing. The cops pull up, and they're saying, "Hey, go get that guy for us." And we're like, "We have nothing to do with that. It's none of our business." And they said, "Oh yeah," and they put us all in handcuffs, put us in the back of the car, and they said, "By the you're gonna open that door for us, or by the time by the time they find you, it's going to be Monday morning, and you're already going to be in the county. And I just remember like thinking like, man, once you're in the power and of the police, at that point they can do whatever they want. And a lot of people don't see that. That's the frustrating part, is they try to combat like, oh well, there's minority and minority crime, and there's black on black crime. But when a person of power does it, you feel helpless, because not only do they control it from the beginning, but they control the prosecution process. They control it to the end.
To the
So
end.
yeah, so it's just like it suffocates you. Yes, we know that crime's going to happen, but if we catch that guy who did the minority on minority crime, or just a crime in general, we know that if he's caught, he can get prosecuted. But when I'm in the in the handcuffs at that point, and I'm in the power of someone who's a bad person, that's so hard to deal with, and it's so suffocating that people don't realize that they can do whatever they want, and they can say they did it for whatever reason they want, and then from that point on, guess who believes them? Everybody believes them, because they're buddy with the judicial system,
and they just pass it off, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's so suffocating to be in handcuffs and to say, man, this guy controls everything that happens going forward, and I don't even like how he's addressing me. I don't like how he's talking to me. So there were times like that, but there were also good times where cops let me off on little things like that. But I have dealt with those things in the past.
One of the saddest things to me is, and do you have kids?
I have a 10-month-old daughter. She turned 10.
Oh, congratulations.
I have her in my coffee mug.
Look at that baby. Oh, look at those cheeks. I know she gets sick of getting kissed on. Listen, so do you have like little people in your family, little nieces and nephews and cousins and stuff like that? Can you speak to how is it in your culture? Like, I know in the African American culture, with my family at least, I have two families, my birth and my adopted family. There's always that conversation that must be had, especially with the boys, about how to navigate once you leave this house.
Yeah.
What to do if you find yourself in that position. Don't say anything, this and the other. And it is a sad, sad, sad conversation, because you feel almost wrong prepping a child for something like that. But you also feel obligated, because if you don't, you could get that call and it's too late. This is one thing that if it happens, there are no do-overs. So is that something that you all have to do as well? Have that conversation with your kids to tell them, listen, it's different for us than it is for others.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so many different scenarios. When you go to certain neighborhoods, hey, when you're in this neighborhood, be careful. Watch how you operate. If you do get pulled over, don't get frustrated, and don't make any sudden moves. Just be careful, be yourself, be respectful to the cop. You do have to have those conversations, especially with the young men, because when people see minority men of color, especially depending on how they're dressed, they automatically assume there's a red light in some people's heads, especially like cops, where they're associated with a certain lifestyle. So you make a wrong move, or the cops automatically thinking, oh man, this guy has a gun, or this guy has a weapon on him. So you have to prep the youth about that, and just say, hey, when the cops pull you over, put both hands outside the car. Just put both hands outside the car. Do what he says, give them what they need, and just be respectful. So don't agitate it. And then the other part about it is, some cops will agitate the situation, meaning that, because I think the most frustrating feeling that I've ever felt, where you kind of want to cry of frustration, is when you know that you didn't do anything, but you're getting handcuffed over suspicion. Because as Americans, we love our freedom, and when that freedom is temporarily restricted over nothing, you're just like, it just engulfs you, and you want to react like with anger. So you have to prepare that emotion for the youth. Like, hey man, they might even say you look suspicious and handcuff you. And I know when you feel like your freedoms are being taken away, and you're like, I didn't do anything, and you're innocent, the biggest frustration comes out. So you have to coach, hey, don't get frustrated, just let it right out, let it get to where it got to go, so that you can get out of that situation. But yeah, we do have those conversations as well.
Wow. I kind of had a feeling. Listen, we're going to take a short break, just a minute or two. And when we come back, I want you to tell us, I would think that to do what you want to do with this youth center, you would almost have to take on the persona of a politician. And I want to ask you about that, if you've already started the process of getting out there, meeting the people in the community, the parents, to get their support, because oftentimes that's how we make things happen. When we come back, we're going to talk to Tone Fernandez about just that. Stay put. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay, we're back. Thanks for sticking around. I'm Loren Michaels Harris, and welcome to Bathrobe Moments Friday edition, where my guest today is Tone Fernandez from the Logan Square area right here in Chicago. And we're talking about, so what's the name of the center going to be?
It's just going to be Entrepreneur Resource Center, ERC.
ERC. Oh, I like that. I can hear that already. So have you found, where are you in the process, and how can we help?
Well, right now, I'm in the process of building relationships. So I've spoken at schools to build connections with teachers in different communities. I've been on Stop the Violence marches. I've had lunch with people who actually run their own Stop the Violence programs already, and who actually have gained traction. One of which, his name is Robert Torres. He runs a Mothers Against Violence program here in Chicago. I mean, he's doing amazing things for the community. So I've connected with him, and I'm in the process right now of I'm transitioning from, I made the connections. Now I'm going to piggyback off a current program. So for phase one is piggyback, just find who already has a program and say, hey, I want to add this. And then the other phase that I'm in is I'm looking at an area. So right now where I'm at, one of the hot spots for violence and things in my area is North Avenue in Pulaski. That's an area. So I've been eyeballing that area to build a center, but for now, probably for the next year or so, it's going to be piggybacking off current programs, current community centers. So I'm at that point now, and then once everything opens up, we're going to accept 15, 20 kids, and we're going to start going through the program that way. And then the program is going to have a set time, and once that the 2 months is over, we're going to have a little competition within the program to provide the winner with a small grant, and also once everything opens up, a trip to Las Vegas with their
nice.
with their parents.
Awesome. Is there going to be some type of a mentoring program, mentorship within it? Because that seems like something you could probably get started without having the need of a building.
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of it's going to be mentoring. Just we're going to pick the different topics, and we're going to help the kids along the way. But along the way, they're going to have to come up with, those who want to be entrepreneurs with a business idea, and we're going to execute it along the way, so where they can see that come into fruition. And then, that's where the light bulb's going to kind of click in their head. We're going to be like, wow, I created this. I went from nothing to this. So there's going to be mentoring along the entire way.
Now, do you ever feel, Tone, like when you sit back, or when you're just laying back thinking about this and seeing it and actually visualizing it, because I know that a lot of what we do is centered around visualization. Does it ever make you feel, or do you ever question whether am I biting off more than I can chew? Will what I do actually make a difference? Because, sometimes when we look back over the decades and we see, man, people have been trying to change this for as long as we can remember, and it doesn't seem like it's changing at all. What is that thing, Tone, that makes you say, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to do this anyway.
Well, I look at other people's stories, like myself or people I grew up with who just had one positive role model, and it wasn't even a program; it was just a word of advice. And then I look at who they are today, and I think as long as I plant the seed now, from now till the next 20, 30 years, who knows? Out of all the people that I've encountered, who knows if one or two of them become they become something huge. They change the world themselves. So
Amen.
I don't look at it like I try to have my hand over the whole world and change everything. No, I'm just planting the seeds that now that you
Mm.
never know, who comes out of that program, what happens. And then, you got to have the right expectations going in. And I think for me, I understand that I look at when I was in programs and I was in, volunteering. Okay, how many of the kids took it serious? How many of the kids got? And then I think, well, you came out of it and you were impacted, so that's all that matters. If I can impact one kid and he goes and does some amazing things, then I would be happy with that.
That's a great point right there. Do you feel that a lot of what you see for this program that you're going to create and are already creating, I should say, has a root, a foothold in some of the programs you experienced as a kid?
Yeah,
Because you
yeah.
know what it did for you.
Yeah, I think the main one of the main ingredients to me getting inspired to do this was the fact that I used to volunteer for those programs. Those programs are directly correlated with. I don't know if you remember, they had a program called Ceasefire in Chicago,
Oh.
and Ceasefire was actually very effective Stop the Violence campaign because it brought former gang members who were leaders or who were in organization. They would go back to their neighborhood and they would call for peace. So they would
Mm.
negotiate. And when Ceasefire was at its peak, it was actually featured on MSNBC because it was effective in stopping wars, gang wars. And I remember that Ceasefire was always on and off because of the funding. And what I remember was that made me think, man, kids' lives are in the hands of funding, like that, just a little bit of funding. And every 4 years, somebody came in and said, okay, we don't need this, we're going to cut the budget. And I thought to myself,
Hmm.
why can't we just do our own thing now? Because it obviously works. It obviously works. Now let's do our own. So that was like one of the ingredients, was those organizations that I saw, and I was just like, man, if they could
Mm.
just even do more and expand, they
Right.
could have a greater impact.
That's so true. One of our viewers, Shelley Dale, says, Tone, my grandma was a school teacher and used to drill it into our heads that anger was a secondary emotion and would make us dig deeper to the actual feeling. Usually sad or scared would come up, and that makes sense too. Listen, this is something that a lot of people don't consider, but I know for a fact because when I was out there beating the bushes, having meetings with older people, because there's some of them were women, down in the hardest hit areas of Chicago. Inglewood was where I began, and we had 112 kids that were scheduled to come to that first Power We Symposium, and they lost their bus contract at the last minute and didn't have a way to get the kids there. So we went the extra mile and got the money donated for the buses, the luxury buses. And all the city had to provide were the chaperones, so many for each amount of, depending on the kids. I think we needed one chaperone for every 10 kids. And we had a barbershop that was willing to be the drop off and pick up spot where all the kids hung out anyway. And do you know, it was the night before when we found out they had no one.
Wow.
So the kids were all ready to go. All the permission slips were in and everything. The parents were behind it. But then there it was, the go-between. Those adults in those places of power who actually dropped the ball. And the reason I bring this up is because I want you to know this going into it, because the kids are what matter the most. I still, to this day, here we are 3 years later, and we've done other Power of We symposiums. We were in Atlanta last year. We're headed to Australia next. And I'll tell you what, I still picture those 111 chairs that we had to pull off the floor at the stand and stack them back in the kitchen area. Because every time I went back there, I looked at those chairs and I said, where are those kids? Their parents, when they left, some of them still thought, because I don't think they'd let all the parents know, oh, we're not going to go because we don't have. So those kids, some of them already had a pass. And so where did they go? And I was like, what if we lose one out there today because some adult dropped the ball? So is that something that you already know? That, it's harder to get adults sometimes to see the light, to see the merit, to see the urgency in something like this, as opposed to the kids who are right there willing and anxious to take a bite. How do you feel about that? And what do you think you're going to have to do to navigate around that mindset or change that mindset?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And we see this in different things, different aspects of life where a lot of adults just giving up on a lot of things and there's just no hope.
Mhm.
And they're just kind of going through life, doing the same old, same old. And I think for me, when I thought about, who do I want to work with in my organization once
Yes.
I start to staff it, and I started thinking about an interview process, but then I also started thinking about people that I already have in my circle who are just as passionate as I am about this, this topic about these kids. So once I get started, I'm going to make sure that I'm very strategic with who I bring on board. And I know I mentioned this earlier when I mentioned, what the priority is keeping kids safe. And I got to make sure that there's no people who come on who are harmful to the kids. But then the other aspect of that is making sure that there's people who are going to inspire children as well and who are inspired by this. And I think you're just looking for that spark, that passion that, when I get in front of a classroom, and I always laugh because I can go on and on to these kids because I see myself in them, and I
Mm.
and I see,
Yep.
like, when I get in front of a classroom, and I've spoken at dozens of classrooms, I see, like, I get very passionate because I see, like, these words that I'm about to say could alter their life right now, and
Mm.
that's what I'm looking for in other people. And I think I've become good at identifying that in other people. When you're talking about with somebody, and I know since you talk to people all the time,
Yeah.
you can feel that energy and that
Yeah.
energy, and you're like,
Yeah.
man, and you
Yeah.
just feed off each other. So that's
Absolutely.
what I'm looking for when I partner up with people, and I think I'm going to be very strategic about who I partner with.
So we have about 6 minutes left. And as we round the final lap of this interview, one of the questions I want to pose to you is this. You have a baby, you have a daughter, you said she's 10 months old.
Yeah.
How different is it now when you think about all these things that you're doing and going to do? How different is it now that you have your own little person than before? And what kind of world are you trying to create for her?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's different for me is I feel that she's watching, and I want to make sure that I operate
Mm.
in excellence because I don't want her to see me get fatigued. I don't want to see me slow down, and most importantly, which would devastate me, is to her to see me quit. So what I did is I use her as a motivation. From who I was before to who I am now, I cleaned up my discipline because I said, I'm becoming an example, like, especially, like, even the small things. When I read, I make sure I read in front of her so that she sees reading is important. I make sure that when I work out, she's right there next to us so she can see that's an important part. And when I help the community and I go out there, she's going to be right there with me because I want her to see this is what it's about. It's about servitude. It's not about yourself.
Amen.
And I think a lot of people, significance is adding value. Success is adding value to self, but significance is adding value to others. And I want her
Mm.
to see, you see it all the time where, the path to greatness, you see a lot of people who are rich, you see a lot of people who are successful,
Mm.
but the people who are great are the ones who can turn around and give back to others. I
Mm.
want to see the basketball player that's great. Yeah, he's great, but how many other great basketball players has he created? How many other great community service members can I create in the process? Because it's not about me. Because what a legacy means is once you step out of that light and once you're done, the person that your predecessor, it doesn't miss a beat. And that truly what a legacy means. Because a lot of people are so self-driven. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's about the process of this lasting forever because you planted that seed. So
Mm.
I want my daughter to see that, and I want her to live in a world where she doesn't have to worry about their shootings going on. Like, I think
Mm.
the saddest thing that I see is when kids, say, I can't go outside. Sorry, I get emotional. Uh,
Hey, brother, I'm with you. Go, do it.
but whew, but when I see kids who say I can't go outside because there's a shooting
Yeah,
or they're shooting, and it's just
I know.
it's really sad. So,
Mm. Mm.
whew.
I know. I know.
It already made me cry. Nah.
Yeah, no, you know what? It's the situation that tears us up, but that's why we were chosen, and we chose in return,
Mhm.
because that's a big part of it. Many are called, but few are chosen. But of those that are chosen, very few will choose in return, because it's not easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it. It's like common sense. If there was such a thing, well, how come more people aren't using it? It's not common at all. So I want to thank you. Here's the connector, the website where you can go and continue your dialogue with Tone Fernandez. You know, I'm saying this. I always look for what we can do right now. Maybe we can start collecting books. Maybe we can start a fundraiser so that we can start putting money into a place where you can start doing stuff that you need to be doing. Whatever it is, here's where you go, people, tonefernandez.com. It's on your screen right now. And in parting, Tone, where would you like to see all of this, say, even just 1 year from today, and how can we help?
I think what I would love to see the most is individuals who have talent, skills in any arena in life, especially like entrepreneurship skills. A year from now, just creating a hub of people that are passionate about helping the kids, that we can kind of all group together and we can teach these kids. Like, I know the money's going to come, you know, God provides.
Amen.
I know the facility is going to come, but the people are the most important part of this. And if I can just get with like-minded individuals, if you're watching this, you have a skill set and you're passionate about teaching others, because it's not going to just be me teaching. You know, I'm going to provide some stuff, but I want experts in the field to come out, and so we can start teaching these kids these concepts. That's the biggest thing to me, because I can find any facility as long as there's chairs. Yeah, as long as there's chairs. I just need the people to kind of come out and volunteer their time, half hour to an hour, and say, hey, today we're going to talk about this topic here, who are experts in their field. And at this point, that's the most important thing to me in a year, just having a good set amount of people around me.
Well, you can count me in. You can count me in.
Yeah, you're the first one.
Okay, let's continue this, you and I, off camera, and set up some stuff, because I know, well, you're coming to Bathrobe Moments After Dark, and we're going to do that, aren't we? Didn't we do that already? Yes, on August 5th.
I don't know if you saw my bathrobe, but
yeah, I wonder what that